All right, folks, I'm super excited about this one. We've got Vivek Sharma from Stripe joining us today. Vivek, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, Blake.
I know you guys have had a big week over there, have a big launch that I'm hoping we can get into. Maybe before we do that, give us a quick background on your path in into product and some of the stuff you've worked on that's led you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I should just be very, very clear that I'm an accidental technologist. Actually, it's like studying religious studies, and then accidentally
Oh
wandered
wow,
into a
yeah.
a Microsoft recruiting event at a small liberal arts college, uh, and the guy was like, "Hey, do you like to write code?" And I was like, "No, I don't know how to write code." He said, "Okay, well, maybe you'll be a good PM." So I did the whole thing, interview, got an internship, and never looked back. And changed to math CS afterwards, and spent 16 years at Microsoft, majority working on Office 365 as it's known today, but Exchange and Outlook and a bunch of things you use to be productive, especially in the Microsoft stack, I guess. Then I sort of like flipped the tables and wanted to do something completely differently. So I went and worked at Facebook, worked on this product called Facebook Marketplace, still one of my favorite products of all time.
Awesome
And
product, by the way.
yeah,
Awesome
everybody had
product.
talked to.
Marketplace is what brought me back to Facebook. So I was an early adopter and then sort of burned out
Yep.
on Facebook. And I'm a millennial, so I went to the Instagram route, and then Marketplace brought me back. And now I'm in kind of like a small town area working remote back in Michigan. And it's like, dude, if you're like a homeowner in a small town, it's must use.
Yep.
It's a great service.
It's a great service, and I hear the same sentiment no matter where people are from. So that was a really fun thing. I had a product for Marketplace, and then I became what we call like the product group lead for gaming, because my goal was to try and do as much, learn as much about the consumer world. I loved gaming. I love games, the entertainment industry, and it was as non-utilitarian as you can possibly get. And so it was a far cry from the likes of Office 365. Uh, and then spent some time on the metaverse because it's very much related to the gaming. Gaming is actually kind of like the central use case even for VR today. And then Stripe called, and over the span of a few weeks, months, it became abundantly clear that the opportunity at Stripe was much, much more massive than what I had given it any credit, because you only see a sliver of what's possible in the public. And I'm happy to share a little bit more about that. But really, it's like a lot of the central themes of things I've spent time in my career came together, which is serving people, and in this case, businesses. At Meta, it was the solopreneurs on Marketplace, the individuals, getting stuff out of the garage and making a few $100, to gaming creators and developers, to B2B businesses and at Microsoft, and at Stripe. It kind of brings it all together into up-leveling entire global economy, which you couldn't ask a bigger mission than that in life. So it's very, very exciting times for us at Stripe.
That's amazing. There's so many exciting things to get into, and I love it seems like you've been able to, maybe in hindsight it feels natural, and at the time it was tricky, but uh, just a good mix of different kind of contexts there. I mean, Microsoft, I'm sure, famously tons of enterprise customers. You're serving the largest
Mm-hmm.
enterprises in the world with huge complex accounts and services and contracts. At Facebook you did, and obviously Facebook serves those customers too, but your experience seemed very end user facing, marketplace
Mm-hmm.
games, like delighting single users at a time. And then I know Stripe is a mix of all of the above. You've got kind of mom and pop solo entrepreneurs, you've got some of the largest businesses in the
Yep.
world. A ton of product folks I talk to like struggle with that kind of like context shifting, or kind of playing in multiple camps like that. And they get in their lane, like I do enterprise and that's what I do. Like, what have you found helps in terms of like being able to shift context that way?
Yeah, this is. I guess there's two things there. One is, in fact, our former CEO Claire Johnson Hughes has a great line. I think recently she uttered this line, which is like, kind of you being a generalist is like underappreciated. And I think
Hmm.
PMs and product managers and related disciplines really have to have a generalist philosophy. And what I mean by generalist philosophy is our jobs are always to like hunt and seek um, for value to bring to the world, to hunt and seek for people that you want to serve. And you can't do that if you have a very dogmatic view of the world, and an overly specialist view of the world, because that's where disruptions happen. Obviously we're seeing, I'm sure we'll touch upon this because AI is the topic du jour. But yeah, so many experts in the world missed the generalist approach to it, which is just scale it using traditional engineering techniques. Sam Altman was at Stripe Sessions yesterday, having a chat with John Collison, and he was kind of like, "Look, like we didn't invent anything new. All we did was put a lot of horsepower behind it and train it with real data, not hypothetical research data." So I think there's real value in having a generalist mindset, especially as if you're a PM, because you will find nooks and crannies that have not been addressed because of over specialization. So that's like a really big theme. And
Hmm.
I guess I discovered that I was a generalist much later on in life, although now in hindsight it seems very obvious from day one that I was a generalist. I think the
Hmm.
second thing, and this is probably the more important one, even if you don't have a generalist uh, philosophy for your own work, I think the one thing that is an absolute requirement, and this is something that really attracted me to Stripe, is the users first or customer first or people first uh, ethos of really listening. Our founder, one of our founders, Patrick Collison, he says this, it's like, we're not geniuses. It might appear that we're geniuses. We're not geniuses. All we do is listen really well. All we do is pay
Hmm.
attention really, really well. And I think that's just like simply the best and first job of a PM is to ignore all of the other distractions, the internal reviews, the PowerPoints, the documents, like the PRDs, the blah, blah, blahs, and just like be like, okay, well, what are people asking for? What are they struggling with? Um, what is it that they are missing that we have not provided them? Or if we've provided things to them, like, are they happy with what they're using? And it's so clarifying. It's absolutely clarifying. This is a little bit of recency bias, but in that spirit, one of the reasons why we were very excited to have this in-person event, Stripe Sessions yesterday, is because you get this like very impromptu, very like succinct conversations with your customers. I
Hmm.
had a great conversation with one of our customers, which you traditionally wouldn't think as a Stripe customer, but Ritchie Brothers. This is like one of the biggest heavy equipment marketplaces in the world. In fact, it's the biggest.
Oh my
So
gosh.
if you want to
Yeah.
buy a $500,000 bulldozer, I'm sure you see those in both Michigan and state of Washington, where I am. You go to
Absolutely.
Ritchie Brothers, and you go to an
Yeah.
auction house, uh, and you in person are making these transactions, and
Mm.
their partnership with Stripe is bringing that world into the online world. And so, like, only by talking to them do you understand the motivation. Is that, look, they want to like modernize for the sake of modernization. They want to modernize
Hmm.
because they want to become a global company that can sell 24/7. And so for them,
Mm.
the checkout is not just 10 lines of code. The checkout is like an essential function that's going to drive their business into the next century. And you
Hmm.
don't get that by just like a PRD or a PowerPoint explaining a brief on a customer. You get that when the SVP is yelling at you for not getting it right on stage in front of 300,
Yeah.
3,000 people. And
Yeah.
so I think I
Yeah.
think that quality from Stripe is just magical. It really is. It just is magical.
Hmm. Yeah. Excellent. I love that you guys do that event, and I've always been such a proponent of events, especially for that reason. Like, it's an amazing, if you're at scale, like a company like Stripe, obviously you're having large user conferences of your own. Even if you're a startup, I think there's industry conferences, there's vendor conferences, there's ways you can get out and connect with customers in
Totally.
person, and it's like such a higher fidelity way of learning, getting feedback, connecting with the customer. Like, huge opportunity, I think, for any PM out there. If you not talking in person to customers, that's a great way to
Yep.
do it. And it's kind of a must do activity. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. I would, let's jump in because I think there'll be a lot of cool stuff once we start talking about this. But the revenue and finance automation suite, did I get that right?
Yep, exactly right.
Tell us about it. Like, when did you come into the project? Kind of what went into product development? Where are you all now? What have you learned through the process?
Yep.
Anything you can, we'll dive in.
Yeah, I'd start like really high level for a second, like 10,000 foot level. And one of the things that attracted me to this opportunity to provide these services to businesses worldwide was that I've seen this story once before. You know, when the shift to the cloud happened, and you know, many folks and many like listeners of yours will probably remember this. It was a scary moment for a lot of folks out there, for businesses, because they were like, oh, so you're asking me to move, you know, like all my critical business data that, you know, we know exactly what's ours to some aggregate machines in the cloud. Are you going to securely manage it? Then you had the folks who were very worried about losing their jobs. They were like, okay, well, if you're doing the work that we were doing, then what do we do instead? And of course and partners were upset because partners like, well, our job is to go into enterprises and help them deploy complex, scenarios and implement deployments. And then of course you had companies themselves, companies like Microsoft who were excited by the change at a strategic level. But if you looked at the numbers all look bad, because traditional box software, you print the CD once, you duplicate it, and you have like 98% margin. You don't see those margins in the world anymore because that world has gone away. And you're talking about delivering software from your own cloud, and your margins are something like 45%, right? Like dramatic change in the economics of a business. And so it's surprising that we were, as an industry, able to actually capitalize on cloud computing and look at the world that exists now. It is just dramatically different. We don't even talk about those days anymore, but it was a scary world back then. I mean, I think you remember from the industry.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It was transformational.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's easy for, I think a lot of industries and companies are still kind of going through this. And I joined Atlassian back in 2016 through a acquisition of a small startup I was at the time. We were the first product in Atlassian. Now they've gone kind of like full cloud, but we were the first product in Atlassian's portfolio that didn't have an on-premise deployment option at all. We were the first cloud-only product they'd ever brought in. And I remember, speaking of conferences, going to that first user conference when we were announced, talking to customers like, what do you mean I can't deploy you on my own servers? That's insane. Like, people were having this conversation in 2016, 2017. In a lot of industries and companies, it's still going on. And absolutely, like transformational shift. Like, our job is to run software. Now the vendor's going to do it. Like, what a crazy shift that was. I always loved the case study of just a little kind of side pin in this. I always loved the case study of Adobe and the way they did their cloud migration. Like, really impressive. I did a deep dive into that once, and there's tons of great stuff written on it. But the way they like pointed their ship and saw what was going on, because they had a massive, software in a box, business model, especially with their creative suite, and deploying that and creating, their creative cloud. Awesome case study. But
that's right.
Yeah, I feel you, and I definitely see the context of this, the suite you all just launched.
That's right. And if you think about the finance world, which is like, finance is also like an overused term, but like, let's just boil it down. Like, a business needs to collect revenue, and whether that's through invoices or subscriptions, that's essentially like modeling your business. Like, like a soccer league is going to have a yearly thing that looks like a subscription, but it's not really a subscription. It's, you're going to commit to 2 halves of a year to, this soccer league. And if you quit halfway through, you get the other half back. Now, that's a business model. That's not like that's not like software. That's a business model. And so, what we try to do is we try to make sure that it's not just payments, it's the things that come before payments that are also taken care of, because the entire customer lifecycle starts at modeling your business from day one. In Ritchie Brothers' case, they're an auction house. They want to go online, right? They're going to have heavy equipment being sold with high dollar value, with like maintenance contracts that come behind it. So it's a combination of invoices and subscriptions with like incredibly nuanced interactions between customers. Because you're not just going to drop $500,000 to buy a John Deere tractor. Like, if this is a thoughtful thing, or you're going to resell it and you want your best price. So like helping businesses really model their business model is actually a really hard job. And that's what we consider this world of billing before payments. This is prepayment. Then you get to payments and collection itself. Now that's where Stripe has had strength. And so we have expertise. One of the amazing stats that we shared at Stripe session is like just using our checkout has like an uplift at checkout in our elements integrations, have an uplift like 10% for online businesses. And you're like, okay, well, if we helped you with your business before you got to payments, and we helped you with optimizing that or enabling it, and you get 10% back on the payments, then we're like, well, obviously we got to do something after payments too. And so that's like a world which has been kind of left by the industry by the wayside. And this, on-premise Excel spreadsheet, email them between account. Like, I have a customer, literally when they send out an invoice, the department person from the sales contract department will walk it over, okay, physically.
Yeah.
And like the paper ledger now says, okay, the invoice has been recorded, wait for it to be paid via check. And then it goes into an Excel spreadsheet. And then it goes and closes the contract. But guess what? Like, as of last week, we can like automate the entire thing for you. You create the contract, we create the invoice. We watch for the invoice, we get it paid. We collect the revenue for you. And then we record it in your accounting system and automatically close the contract. That's why I call this thing revenue and finance automation, because nobody has really seriously taken a look at this. And from a Stripe perspective, it gives us an opportunity to solve problems that are both before payments and after payments. It's a great adjacency. From a simplicity of narrative to our own customers, we have a right to play because we are at the union of the front and back office, which is very unique in the industry. Either you're like in the front and you don't talk to the back office, or in the back, you don't talk to the front office. Well, Stripe actually has a vantage point that affords us listening to our customers on both ends. So it was like in like hindsight, as you said, it seems very obvious that Stripe would try and serve businesses in this way. So when I joined, I think, the only thing I would say is that we have really radically shifted since I joined. Is not that we have changed our strategy. Our strategy remains the same, to solve these problems, your entire cash flow lifecycle. I think what we've done is actually focused on the go-to-market, because that's a part of the product job too. And to really make this a solution instead of like a bunch of point products that a customer has to struggle with, which they traditionally do in the industry. No, we really try and be use case oriented. So if you're a traditional company and you have salespeople, like, we will figure out a use case to make this whole thing work for you. If you're a modern online business like OpenAI, which, by the way, it uses Stripe billing subscriptions, it uses payments, and it uses our accounting software to like complete the cycle of worldwide distribution of ChatGPT or Midjourney. We help you by use case solve this entire problem end to end. And I think that's like where the magic has really started happening. When we, more broadly announced this last couple of weeks what we were doing, it was really surprising. Out of the woodworks, people were just coming out, customers saying, hey, why didn't you tell us you were doing this stuff? Because it's an industry that's been left behind. And so I think you can see there's a very obvious value exchange in the universe. And it mimics the digital transformation that you talked about in the cloud computing era. So, I would encourage a lot of folks to like pay attention to these unserved markets and replicate the success we've seen in the past.
Yeah. That's such good advice. And it's, you look at these massive success stories, and typically there's some existing undercurrent, and maybe it's not obvious or glamorous, but companies that kind of hitch their wagon to those find the inefficiencies in them, find ways to problem solve within that context. There's, just endless value to ship once you kind of hit that vein, right? So
Exactly.
very, very cool. Yeah. And I can tell you're an excellent product leader because you speak in terms of real customer examples, pain points, problems. Like you have these go-to anecdotes that I can tell you've talked to customers and talked to a lot of people about this. So that is great to
Appreciate
hear.
that.
And I I'd love to learn more about anything in terms of a lot of our audiences, product builders, PMs. Everyone looks up to Stripe, like you said. When Stripe called you, you take the call. Like everyone looks up to Stripe for great, well-deserved reason. Anything you can tell me about the way Stripe builds product? Did anything surprise you when you came in? I mean, you'd also been inside Meta and Microsoft, so obviously saw how excellent enterprises built product. But anything unique or surprising when you got in there at Stripe?
I think, yeah, actually, Stripe is a very unique company because it doesn't have what I would call like a traditional product line in some sense. What it has
Mm-hmm.
is almost a universal infrastructure for money movement. And we call that payments, and there's like a lot of fintechs out there that are trying to work in the financial industry, but nobody really has taken the perspective that Stripe has, which is this is really a massive network. And in some sense, the product is the ability for that network to do more things for the connected entities on that network. And so, the connected entities are beyond just a traditional business. They are the partner ecosystem. There's the banks. There's the local payment methods. There's the entire economy. And so Stripe, I think, has a very unique perspective on product because it's almost a underpinning of the way that modern commerce and modern transactions are fulfilled on the wider internet. And so just the way that I would say Meta has a unique vantage point on what it means to be a modern human being communicating with each other on the internet, I think Stripe has a really unique vantage point on what the economic system of the world is and how money flows in and out. So that like perspective of this is not just a product line, but it's an interconnected system is quite powerful. And I think we attract a lot of system thinkers. And system thinkers think, all the way up and down the stack, right? They think about, like we talked about, like in the case of revenue and finance automation, there's an ecosystem here inside companies connected to integrally their business model. There's a system at work that we have to help companies struggle with and help them with. As soon as money like leaves a business or comes into a business, it's connected to an external system, which is full of potholes that Stripe is getting rid of or filling up. And so these interconnected systems and being able to navigate them both top and down the stack, but also left and right, is a really critical ability that we look for in our PMs. I find it really magical that we have a lot of cross-discipline PMs. Like we do have PMs who didn't come from the finance industry, like myself. But I think the single thread that we all have and all share is like an obsession with customers, system thinkers. And then I think the third thing, which is very, very unique at Stripe, when you're a bit more of like the nuts and bolts infra, movement, platform type company, you can often be lulled into thinking that, hey, just by enabling something, you've done your job. But Stripe goes to endless, means to make sure that it's actually a high quality, friction-free experience. And we just never, ever, ever feel satisfied at the company that we've done a good job. And so it can be a kind of a really interesting place to be where every single day, you're seeing friction logs from all over the company come into like the shared aliases, and every single day it feels like nothing is good enough. But if you're a system thinker, you then end up realizing that actually your job is to kind of like shave away all of the parts of the system. And that's what makes this really complex, challenging, and, frankly, a lot of fun. And so people who live and breathe this world at Stripe have this intersection of these three things. And they love it. They actually just generally love it. It goes without saying there's going to be folks who like particular aspects. And that's what makes Stripe unique.
That is such a good overview. I really appreciate that. Let me drill into one specific thing you said. Friction logs. Did I catch that right?
Yeah.
What's a friction log?
So a friction log is walking through an end-to-end scenario, or like the series of steps to complete a task. And it could be as trivial as I went to a search engine. Now I have to say search engine because the heat is on. It's no longer just the heat is on. Exactly. I have to say search engine. Yeah. So I have to go to a search engine.
The market share is vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. The market share is vulnerable. I love that line. Just recently, I saw a friction log from one of our teammates because we launched this thing called Stripe Tax Standalone API. We've had supported tax on top of payments for a long time, but this standalone tax API is really cool because anybody, even if they don't use Stripe payments, can now use Stripe tax. And that's like cool because it's like first time that you don't have to have a Stripe payments integration in order to use something else from Stripe. And it's like, it's a big deal. And so they went to a search engine, they typed in, Stripe tax, and to try and like navigate their way into the new functionality. And boy, was it just like impossible. The marketing site wasn't updated. It didn't have the right words. The documents weren't in the right spot. And this is not me like oversharing some problems with it. Like I'm just talking about what the job is. The job of a PM is to make sure that the entire journey for a customer is taken care of. It doesn't just, start at your widget inside the dashboard. And so the friction log was literally, look, like we gotta like help people wayfind and actually like find the solution, and we're not helping them. And so, people jumped on it. Like the docs are cleaner now. The marketing side is cleaner now. That's like a good example. And so I picked that example because you think it would be like, oh, I went to this attribute and I flicked this and there was a bug. Yeah, those are also covered. We have a lot of those, but it goes way, way beyond that. There was a friction log for our conference that somebody wrote up. There's a feedback Slack channel that was created, and somebody wrote up friction log. They're like, well, I tried to go talk to our customers and it was a little bit loud. Next time we should make sure that we have the right decibels. So Stripe, when I say that it cares about the details, the meticulousness, I really mean it.
Got it. That's so cool. So it's, the way a programmer is going to look at the log files to analyze a bug, you're creating those as a document, as an artifact for anything, the environment of the conference, the experience of the documentation page. I love that. And then also, I spent most of my career on the marketing side and product marketing, and music to my ears. I can't, what you say, starting at the search engine. So many times I've had people, or I've said, hey, I've done this at probably 4 startups. Like, hey, our integrations discovery experience really sucks. And, someone pulls up like, no, here's the directory page and here's the documentation. It's like, no, go to the search engine, type in company name integrations. That's the path that users are going to take. Like, that's how they're getting to they're not messing around in your nav bar and clicking, 4 links. Like they're typing Stripe integrations. They're clicking whatever the first result that pops up is. Start the experience from there, because that's what people are doing. And I love the sort of holistic thinking around that. And it's great. And I've always said, Stripe's one of those companies where it's like, you can see the harmony as the user, because as you go through marketing site, documentation, product, support, you don't see the seams. And so many companies put up these experiences where it's like, you can feel the transition. It's like, I'm on the marketing site. Oh, now I'm in the docs. Oh, now I'm in the product. It's like this clunky, herky-jerky step from one to the other. Stripe, great companies do this with, it feels like a one experience rather than, popping around the org chart.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we there's no shipping the org chart here. Yeah.
Um, a lot of PMs obviously look up to Stripe, dream of working on product there someday. Any particular practices or experiences or things you recommend maybe earlier career PMs work on if they want to want to explore being at Stripe someday?
Yeah, obviously we have a particular affinity to this world of I would say money movement at large, right? And money movement can be inside of a company, which is revenue and finance automation. We're helping you from your billing to your tax to your revenue accounting to your data systems. Gleaning insights from all of this and going all the way back to the beginning, or we're helping the entire internet move money, which is like, from a an online commerce site being able to accept payments to sending, issuing capital, like all of those things. So I think you have to have some. You don't have to be an expert in that, but certainly some appreciation of that problem space or similar problem spaces is useful. I think if you're a generalist, if you are able to grasp, systems thinking, or at least start looking into what does it mean to think about a system holistically. I actually love your marketing example that you went through on, sorry, not your marketing narrative that you went through. That's a system. It's a system that helps people onboard into a new product. And so I think expanding in those ways and experiencing what does it mean to create holistic systems that take customers or users through a journey is like a very essential part of what does it mean to be a good Stripe PM, not just a good Stripe PM, a good Stripe. I think the other thing that's like very useful is just the set of values that the company has. I think in many cases, earlier on in your career, it's not necessarily just about technical skills. It's about the set of values that will drive your career forward in the ways that you want. And one thing, if you're aspiring for a company like Stripe, and there are many, right? There's lots of great companies out there. Make sure you kind of hone in on the type of values that are going to carry you through. And so some of the values being incredibly curious about what especially your end user or your end customer is going through. That level of curiosity is like essential. Being motivated by the right outcomes. I personally think this is a really important thing. One of the values that I love about Stripe is this is not a place for a classic career because we don't even have titles inside the company, but we are very outcome driven. We care about shipping, we care about maintaining, we're like incrementing, we care about a lot of the things that meaningfully add value to somebody's life, to a business's existence, to a customer's life. And so those things are materially more important to try and foster earlier in a career than thinking about like, okay, well, I went from PM1 to PM2 to PM3. That's actually not as materially important than the ability to marshal your strength and energy towards adding something to the world and then being meticulous about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you heard it here. That's how you get a job at Stripe. That's awesome. No, there's more
The
to it
cheat
than
sheet.
that. But
You got
that's
the cheat sheet.
that's a cheat sheet. Yeah, you've peeked at the answer sheet a little bit. And I really appreciate that. Quick fun one. I like to wrap up with. I like to ask product people about products. What is a product? You can't answer anything at Stripe. What's a product? It can be for work or just like something B2C, but something that you've been playing with, think is cool, excited about lately.
Well, obviously, I mean, like I kind of teed this up earlier. I'm a sucker
Yeah,
for the latest and greatest. So I've been playing around with all of the GPTs.
for sure.
I did the Bing one. I think just the Bing one is not a waitlist anymore, which is pretty cool. Bard is still a
Yeah,
waitlist. Of course, ChatGPT. I think
yeah.
this whole area has perhaps more disruption, but in a different way than people may think it is. I think a lot of folks are jumping to the conclusion that this is the beginning of the the AGI. It's kind of like the same way when I hate to make this analogy. You're gonna hate me for it. You know what's coming. But the same way in like crypto, it was like, oh, we went from, hey, it'd be really cool to have pseudonymous universal ledger as a tech backbone. And we suddenly went from that to being like, wow, this is going to change the humanity forever. Oh my God. Like, the wheels have been broken, like Games of Thrones style. And you're like, no, actually it's just a really clever, very smart tech thing that we should be, leveraging as a tech tool to, so I think people complain the same thing. There's like incredible, amazing tech that's being built in the AI world, machine learning world. But I think people are conflating like the human consequences of that and are getting distracted by it, when there's actually a lot of just rudimentary, really simple, but mind-numbingly boring tasks in the world that can just be removed. And so, some of these conversations I've been having with folks, it's like, well, is this going to remove our jobs? And it's like, well, list the 20 things that you need to do for your job. It turns out the first 20 or the first 10 are absolutely like time invasive, but high criticality because they're always needed every month. And you can't ever get to the top 10 higher value things that you want to do. You can't write hot papers. You can't do deep thinking. You don't have time to yourself to actually like use a product and dog food it yourself. And so it's like, the answer is, can we just get rid of the boring stuff that we all do so we can get to higher level activities? And I think that narrative and that like focus is something that we are trying to do. We showed off some stuff at Stripe. Yeah, people should look at it. Nobody likes to write SQL, and so we got rid of the requirement to write SQL at Stripe. But that's like the example. It's like, instead of saying, hey, this is gonna destroy databases, we're like, database is gonna be around. We're just going to make it easier to like not spend 10 hours looking up SQL queries and instead just ask the thing what you need. So I think that's like the reflection I have on all of this stuff. And it actually is a really good, note that threads some of the needle that you're talking about around being a PM. Often, you talk to the casual person and they'll tell you what the source and ground truth is. And so you have to be very careful not to get bamboozled by the talking heads in the world and really just get down to ground truth. And so when I was visiting our team in India, it was just like, parents were like, yeah, we bought a ChatGPT thing because our kids are like, they hate like writing the first draft. And you're like, okay, that's cool.
Amazing.
Right. That's like not complicated, nothing crazy about this. This just seems like, and it turns out there's an entire industrial complex that's going to emerge out of this on every single dimension, which is going to create more opportunity for more people as they get to higher level activity. So I'm incredibly excited by it. I think we're embracing it, in our own, I would say, what did you call it? Like boring, unsexy way.
Exactly. Yeah. It's amazing. I'm so excited for the day. Speaking of boring and not glamorous, but man, how many it happens in every meeting, every business across the world, every day. It's speaking of SQL writing, someone has a question, someone has a prompt for someone in the room. How many of our enterprise customers started out on the business?
Exactly.
And someone goes, I don't know. I think, let's look that up and give it. Okay, we're gonna look it up after the meeting. Like someone's left. Imagine being able to just like prompt that,
That's exactly right.
Like, human language query your business's data and have that
Absolutely.
answer immediately, and not do this dance of like, well, Marshall writes SQL, but he's so and so today, so we'll do this. So it's like, oh my gosh, that dance is
exactly
trillions of hours of economic productivity wasted on that.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so in fact, Blake, you should check out the demo that we did. It had a little bit of I won't give it away. There's a little funny joke. So check out the keynote for sessions and see if the scenario that you just described, the use case you just described, is sufficiently fulfilled. But yeah, I'm just like incredibly enthusiastic about the turn of events that we've seen recently, which is just at best, it's just another crank of the automation cycle that we all have gone through in our careers. And at
Yeah.
worst, it's a slightly less version of the automation cycle that we've all gone through in our careers. So I think it's all goodness.
100%. Well, great note to wrap up on. Vivek, thanks so much for being with us today. This was super fun. If folks want to reach out, say hi, learn more, where can we point them?
You can, Twitter's good. I'm Puck Norris on Twitter. Yeah,
Nice.
Chuck Norris's lesser known brother, Puck
His
Norris.
his Canadian
His Canadian,
brother.
his Canadian brother. You can
Perfect.
also hit me up on LinkedIn, easily findable. But yeah, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that you put into this, and letting us tell our story a little bit.
Absolutely. Happy to do it anytime. Thanks for being here, and we'll have to catch up again. Thanks, Vivek.
All right, thank you.